for the families of the passengers on board, as well as the investigating team who have been working very hard to search for the plane, as well as members of the public, this journey has been a confusing one, at times frustrating as well. From the initial question of where is the plane, it has now become, how could this have happened? With respect, throughout the course of this search, information has not been forthcoming from the authorities. The answers that were given by the Defense Minister, the Department of Civil Aviation, the Air Force, and the authorities contain many contradictions, and they give more questions than answers. We would like to ask, was the MH370 tragedy an accident or an unprecedented event, or is it related to human error? While we are unable to bring back that plane, it is worth exploring how we could have done things differently, and we put this question to our three panelists tonight. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speakers for tonight. Our first speaker for tonight is Mr. Lam Choong. Mr. Lam is a senior fellow at REFSA. He holds a Bachelor of Engineering in Aerospace from USM and a master's degree in Strategic and Defense Studies from UM. Well, making too much criticism has earned him a reward. He was blacklisted by MINDEF in 2012, and he thinks that this is a compliment instead of an insult. So before joining REFSA, Mr. Lam was also an editor with Rocket, as well as a defense reporter. I would like to invite Mr. Lam. Before Mr. Lam gets into his presentation, we might as well introduce the rest of the speakers. Our second speaker is Mr. Tommy Thomas. He is a constitutional Mr. Thomas is a constitutional lawyer who has over 36 years of legal experience under his belt. He was called to the Malaysian bar in 1976. Apart from being a lawyer, Mr. Thomas is also interested in corporate governance issues. He was formerly a director of the Malaysian Institute of Corporate Governance and was appointed to the United Nations Development Plan, UNDP, as to lead the corporate governance initiative for Asian countries affected by financial and economic crisis of 1997. Mr. Thomas is currently representing the Penang State Government in federal court in a bid to restore local government elections. Our final speaker for the night needs no introduction. Mr. Lim is a lawyer by profession, a politician, was first elected in 1969, an ex-ISA detainee twice over. He is the author of 34 books and an active Twitter user. Over the past 4 decades, Mr. Lim has been very vocal on a range of social political issues, ranging from corruption to good governance, and he has always spoken out without fear or favor. I'm sure he will do so again tonight. With that, it gives me great pleasure to invite Mr. Lam to deliver his remarks.
Hello, good evening to everyone. In the first place, I want to thank Qatar Media and the REFSA staff who made this event a success, and then to materialize this event also. MH370 is the hottest topic in Malaysia currently. I think everyone has one question. Where did it go? What was happening there? And why our government acted in kind of the different way that other than international standards and things like that. Many hanky-panky, many things. The people are demanding a lot of answers from the government, but it seems that the government turned the ear and the one to reveal much more information to the public. But however, by digging information 1 inch by 1 inch, we managed to get a clearer picture a little bit by little bit. So this is the objective that we want to do this forum tonight. We are here, we want to provide kind of the alternative opinions about this tragedy. We hope we can shed some light of this tragedy also. In my presentation, I'm going to present the whole scenario from two perspectives. One is from a technical perspective, and another one is from an institutional reform perspective also. Let me begin. There are so many doubts. Doubts still remain. There are still many unanswered questions. They are still there. Now, new doubts have emerged after the minister make more remarks. More remarks, he make more questions arise. I will go one by one, questions and answers also, my own predictions and my own analysis also. The first question is, other than these questions, I won't raise up the all questions which has been answered by authority and already answered by the press or things like that. I want to raise some questions. Okay. Did MH370 fly across Peninsula? I think this question is very, very important. The government, according to my knowledge, the government until today, they don't admit that the MH370 it flew through Peninsula, northern part of Malaysia. The answer given by them was very, very blurred and very, very unclear. In the first few weeks, the authority kept silence on the questions of whether or not the plane turned back and flew across Peninsula Malaysia. They just mentioned about few points only. They said the plane flew through several navigation waypoints such as Igali, Wempi, Iglas, and Jiwa, which you can find them all from internet. This is the chart given by the authority. From the first Igali to Wempi, Jiwa, and Iglas. Initially from this chart, you can see that MH370 it did not fly through Peninsula. And the government didn't give any explanation about that also. But however, after the people, the members of families, international media, the press, they gave a lot of pressure on the authority, and finally they reviewed the final path of MH370. You can see it from here. Actually, it did fly through Peninsula Malaysia. You can see it's not very clear on the slide, but you can see some lines there. Okay, this is the fundamental thing. However, we have another map provided by Australian Transport Safety Bureau. This map is much more clearer than the map provided by our Malaysian authority. You can see the plane, it flew to the Igali point, and then it make a U-turn. Make a U-turn, and the turning point is quite. It turned left, and then it flew through Kota Baru, and then to Penang, and then vanished. The last primary radar at the international time is 18.20 seconds. Combine these two maps, then we can get some little bit clearer picture about it. The authority they keep on to avoid to mention anything about the military radar. Unfortunately, we Malaysians don't have the privilege to have a view on the snapshot or about any information about the military radar. But however, members of family in China, they had the privilege to see this map. This map was presented by our Malaysian Air Force in Beijing. We don't have the privilege to see it in Malaysia. You can see Penang is over here, and then it flew to the last point, and then vanished. Okay, this is a chart. I got it from Sky Vector. It's an online website. You can see so many lines on the chart. The lines represent the flight path of various international flights. If you want to fly from Malaysia to Beijing, you want to fly from here to Bangkok, fly from here to Jakarta, every flight path is fixed. There is no alternate flight path unless there is some kind of emergency things happen up. So everything is fixed. I presented here because I will let you see another slide also. I overlay this chart with the previous map, then you will see another story. See, you can see the line, the yellow color line is overlapping with the flight path, the established flight path. Why was it happen in this way? Why? There are some questions that have to be answered also. The flying path seems to be somewhat in accordance with the established flight path. My guess, first, perhaps the plane encountered uncontrollable technical failures, which led the air crews to decide to turn back, and then they did have some time to change their waypoints. They didn't fly the aircraft by manually. They did manage to control the FMS, which is Flight Management System. This is the first case scenario, and the second case is the airplane might be hijacked by someone, and it was deliberately steered from its original course. And these are the two facts that we have to determine. But it seems that the authority still don't want to reveal so much about information about the guessing of this. And second point is the MH370. It flew through Aceh, Indonesia, Banda Aceh. You can see from the map. But did the Indonesian air defense radar detect the airplane? It is very crucial. According to the Indonesian Daily Jakarta Post report, Indonesian radar at Lok Siu Mavi did not pick up the airplane. The radar's detection range is around 400 km. But where is Lok Siu Mavi? Let's see. Lok Siu Mavi is around there. You can see that the radar detection is very, very vast and wide. It already covered the whole area. And I overlap this map again with the previous map. You can see. So within this radar detection range, MH370 is under Indonesian radar detection. But why Indonesian air defense system, the air commander, they said it didn't detect MH370? If Indonesian Air Force radar didn't pick up MH370, why? This is the first question. And will this affect the ultimate estimated and the flight path of MH370? Does it mean that the MH370 didn't fly to Indonesia, or it fly to another place? We don't know. And second, Cocos Islands. According to the flight path provided by the authority, also, it flew to almost very close to Cocos Island, nearly less than 100 kilometers away only. If Cocos Islands equipped with air defense radar, perhaps Australia can provide some more information. This is what I guess. And also, according to my knowledge, as far as I'm concerned now, Cocos Islands has one airport there, and also it has radar there also. If it has radar, then certainly Australia can determine whether they have detected MH370, whether it flew to the South Indian Ocean or not. Another question is always raised by the people. Is it possible an aircraft being hacked and under the control of hacker? Yeah, it happened before. It's true. This is an unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV, built by America, RQ-170. This is a stealth unmanned aerial vehicle, and it invaded Iran in 2011. In December that year, Iran they proved to the world that an aircraft can be hacked and its control overridden. The aircraft landed in Iran under the instruction by Iranian. The Iranian they successfully captured the UAV, but that was an unmanned vehicle with no physical flight control system. Boeing 777 is designed for a manned control and has physical control mechanism. It's a different scenario. It is hard for the hacker to override the physical control system. It's easy for the hacker to override the software system. Actually, hackers have proven before that actually they really can hack into the flight control system, but they cannot override the physical control system only. And in the end, the American Federal Aviation Agency they came out and they said it publicly that they noticed this kind of activity, but however, they overruled any possibility of an aircraft can be hacked and controlled. This is the first part. I talk about the technical things, and the second part is about institutional reform. On paper, this tragedy can be ascertained, and there are a lot of unknown variables to it. However, there must be a reason for the incident. There must be. Perhaps even several reasons coming together to allow the tragedy to happen. I call it as a perfect storm, just quoted from a movie. The first thing, we have to look into this deeply. What if it was intercepted during the event? Our Air Force and Defense Minister, they keep on saying that MH370 it isn't a hostile target. That is why they didn't scramble their aircraft, their fighters to intercept it. But how to determine an aircraft is hostile? They don't want to review their standards, then we have to count on international standards, which is American standards, which is the highest standards in the world. According to the United States, the Federal Aviation Agency regulations, an aircraft is a threat and treated as an enemy aircraft and can be intercepted by fighter aircraft if, number one, if it flies in or through the boundary without prior fouling in its flight plan, which MH370 didn't do it. Second, the aircraft radar transponder is not operational. Yes, MH370 they switch off their transponder. Third, it doesn't maintain two-way radio contact. Yes, MH370 didn't establish any two-way radio contact with the air traffic controller. So in this scenario, MH370 fulfilled these three conditions. In the American case, they will scramble their A-jet, their fighters to intercept it. But in Malaysia, we have different case. Comparison between MH370 and Air France 447, the tragedy. Our defense minister always use this as an example to say that we are doing better than Air France, and also the Brazilian, the air traffic control also. He claims that Air France activated search and rescue operation after 7 hours of of loss of communication. While our mast triggered search and rescue just after 4 hours, we did better than them. But did we really do better? There are several facts that need to be distinguished before we make a comparison. This time schedule, what I did for the Air France 447, I highlighted several phrases. You can see that this was the last contact with the aircraft, which happened at 1 o'clock 35 minutes 38 seconds at night. And at 4 o'clock 20 minutes 27 seconds, Brazilian, they sent a message to Air France so that an airline, that Air France, to try to contact Air France at 4 o'clock 80 minutes. And then at 5 o'clock 23 minutes, air traffic controller in Brazil, they triggered the search and rescue. 5 o'clock 23 minutes. And at 8 o'clock sharp, Air France Operation Control Center, they set up a crisis group. So I did some summary about it. Air France 447, they took off from Brazil on 31st May 2009 and vanished when crossing the Atlantic Sea at 2:14 a.m. 1st of June. The flight until the moment it vanished was under Brazilian air traffic control jurisdiction before passing the flight control to Dakar, Senegal, which is an African country. It is more important for us to scrutinize Brazilian responses and reactions than Air France itself. Why? Because the aircraft was under Brazilian jurisdiction. There is no point to blame Air France. But this is what our Hishamuddin is doing right now. He's blaming Air France, but he didn't look at the Brazilian response. So, by analyzing the timelines of both events, Brazil it took 3 hours and 48 minutes precisely to initiate search and rescue process. But Malaysia took 4 hours 11 minutes, which is longer than Brazil also. So, did Hishamuddin realize this fact? I think he should do a little bit homework before he say anything. The third point is immigration security screen failure. The failure of the Malaysian airport security to link up with the Interpol database had allowed the true undocumented aliens to onboard the aircraft. This shouldn't happen, but it happened. A blur zone, what I call is a blur zone. The aircraft, it turned back at Igali Point, which is a boundary between Malaysia air traffic control and Vietnamese air traffic control. In this point, Malaysia will pass the control, the authority to Vietnamese air traffic control, and Vietnamese, they will take over the control authority from Malaysia. In this event, Malaysia thought that we have passed the MH370 to Vietnam. But however, Vietnam thought that MH370 was still in the jurisdiction of Malaysia. And that is why they wasted so much time communicating with each other to ask whether the aircraft was in your place or not, the aircraft was still in your place or not. They keep on exchanging their messages. If you follow this case, and then they took more than 3 hours to clarify that yes, the aircraft was not in your place, neither in your place also. It flew away already. Number 5, where is the professionalism? Since 1995, when the last mass airplane tragedy happened, in these last 19 years, MAS and the Malaysian Department of Civil Aviation have not faced any serious aircraft incident. Is it the reason that our MAS and our authority cannot handle this incident good or in a well manner? They handle it in very, very bad manner in terms of the public relations also, in terms of handling the whole case, the search and rescue process also, they did it very badly. So I think they have to restore their professionalism. 6. Why isn't there an independent air accident investigative bureau in Malaysia? In US, UK and France, they have a very, very developed aviation industry. They have specialized departments. They have specialized departments to investigate aircraft incidents. This we can understand. It's very normal for them because they have very, very advanced aircraft manufacturing industry. But even a small countries such as Singapore, Thailand, and Mongolia, they also have their own accident investigation bureau. But does Malaysia have it? Or is it important to have it? Yes. My answer is yes. It's very important to have it because we have the biggest regional low-cost airliner hub in Malaysia. We have more air traffic than Singapore. We have more air traffic than Mongolia. We have more air traffic than Thailand. So why we don't have a specific or independent air accident investigative bureau? Currently, we have one air security division under our DCA, Department of Civil Aviation. But that unit doesn't have any skill, doesn't have any capabilities, or doesn't have the equipment to investigate any very, very big or small that kind of the air accidents. I think we should really need to think about this thing. And my final thing is about what is the truth? Everyone is demanding the truth. And the members of families, they deserve the truth. My humble request is, please set up a royal commission to investigate the whole thing, the whole scenario. This is the only way for you to restore your reputation and your authoritative also. And besides this, you, the government, and also the authority have to look back to your institutional weaknesses and correct it, and also improve it also. And the technical failures I mentioned just now also, I think we have to establish one accident investigative bureau. If we do have one, then we don't need to count on Australia so much. Right now, we count on Australia to do the whole thing for us, on behalf of us, including search and rescue the aircraft, and also investigating the thing also. And also, the authority has set up one international technical investigating team, which is led by our former DCA chief. However, the team is going to look for the technical failure or the technical perspective on it. I don't think they are going to look into the institutional failures. I think they have to be reminded in this way. Yeah, thank you.
Very much, Mr. Lam. Certainly raised a lot of questions about the technical and institutional failures. We would like to hear more about this. May I invite the second speaker, Mr. Tommy Thomas, to share his views on today's topic.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to share my thoughts on the MH370 tragedy. For weeks after the disappearance of the plane on 8th of March, various governmental authorities claimed that there should be no public discussion as a mark of respect for the families of those on board. I suggest... Is that better now? I suggest that what the families have wanted most from the morning of 8th of March when the plane was scheduled to land at Beijing at 6:30 a.m. is the truth and nothing but the truth. In order to achieve closure, they wanted facts and evidence. They have never received facts or evidence from our government. Therefore, this forum serves an important function in trying to understand why the tragedy was wholly man-made and therefore avoidable. In a nation that is used to mattresses being brought to court to establish sodomy and immigration records being erased, the evidence that was released on MH370 on a piecemeal, selective and haphazard manner was never truthful. So if I just mention a few for you to recall, the stolen passports of the Iranians, whether or not the transponders were switched off, whether there was only a large quantity of mangosteens on board and everything else was fine. What happened to the flight simulator of Captain Zahari after it was taken from his home for investigation. And the most recent, the audio recordings that were released together with the preliminary report on the 1st of May, that was edited and tampered with according to international experts. So my first observation is that we cannot trust the information that was released both around the time of the crash and most significantly on the 1st of May as being truthful. Of course, you will remember 1st of May is when they issued the preliminary report. Nonetheless, one can try to form a picture by piecing together the information, however incomplete it is, that was released that day. This is like fitting some puzzles in a jigsaw. And what I propose to do is to consider the chronology of events that...
Adjust your microphone. Can't be heard.
Oh. Is it not? Is it? Yes. I'd like to consider the chronology of events that occurred from 12:41 a.m. to 8:19 a.m. on Saturday, the 8th of March. And this is essentially taken from what was released by them on the 1st of March. So you must take it with a pinch of salt because we just don't know whether it's truthful. But let's assume it's truthful. So what happens is at 12:41, the plane takes off from KLIA, scheduled flight to Beijing, 239 persons, 227 passengers, 12 crew. And then very quickly it climbed up to 35,000 feet, nothing to report. And then at 1:19, the last communication between KL Air Traffic and MH370, and somebody on board, we're not sure whether it's the captain or the co-pilot, ended the famous words, which of course they also got it wrong for 3-4 weeks, but the words were, quote, "Good night Malaysian 370. And then the critical event happened, which was just 2 minutes later, 1:21, I'll forget about the seconds, MH370 was observed on the radar screen as it passed over Igeri. So there's no problem then. So what it means is if I stop there, for 40 minutes, it was on the radar. So if anybody is watching it, they could see for 40 minutes it's on the radar. And then at 1:21, and here it matters, 9 seconds later, the radar label for MH370 at KL Air Traffic Control disappeared from the screen. And this was the first warning bells. So if anybody was sitting there and watching the radar as they ought to be doing, they should have immediately notice, hey, I noticed the blip and now it's disappeared. Where has it gone? And that happened 40 minutes after the radar screen picked it up and was following it. And then 17 minutes later, at 1:38, Ho Chi Minh Air Traffic Control inquired from KL on the whereabouts of MH370. And that obviously tells you, as Mr. Lam said, Vietnam has not received the plane yet. It has not entered Vietnamese airspace. So Vietnam asks what's happened to it. So therefore, even if the guy in the KL Air Traffic Control was asleep, which is a high potential and high probability in Malaysia at 1:21, if he was asleep, he would have been awakened by the Ho Chi Minh question at 1:38. Hey, mister, where is the plane? It has not entered Vietnam. And the penny should have dropped at that point of time. And I suggest that if we had done what we ought to have done at 1:21 and 1:38, then this could have been avoided. And I'll emphasize that later when when the plane turns around. And then we start the conversation between Malaysia and between KL and Ho Chi Minh that Mr. Lam mentioned, and I won't go into the details. But what is interesting is I suggest that even on the information released by Malaysia, it's Ho Chi Minh Air Traffic Control that emerges as real heroes. For 6 times, on 6 separate occasions, they asked the question to KL, where is MH370? So they are so concerned. So what this tells me, as a trial lawyer, and I want to emphasize that when I'm piecing this information, this is what one would do when one prepares for a trial. You want evidence and you want your witnesses. What this tells you is that the Vietnamese air officers are very professional, they're very concerned, and they want to know what is happening. Whereas we have a sleepy bunch, and that's being polite. And then somewhere along the line, we say it's gone into Cambodia. And I don't know, and of course, I don't know where they got that information. They claim Mars told them it's in Cambodia. And they tell this to Vietnam. And then Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh doesn't believe it. And then Ho Chi Minh does the extra thing, which we never did. Ho Chi Minh contacted Cambodia. And Cambodia says, we don't know what you're talking about. And Ho Chi Minh then replies to Kuala Lumpur saying, it's not in Cambodia. So it's, in a sense, it's laughable. It's, in many ways, if there had not been deaths, it's a farce. And then, after some time, while this exchange between KL and Ho Chi Minh is going on, we KL say, well, if it's not in Cambodia, KL is asking Ho Chi Minh, do you think it could have gone to Hong Kong or Beijing? And then, and I guess the guy in Ho Chi Minh must have been laughing and say, look, these people are lunatics. It hasn't even come to Vietnam. How is it going to fly across to Beijing? Because it's just unbelievable. And then we finally wake up, and at 5:09 we are Singapore. And I mean, if you check the map, Singapore is south of Malaysia and and the wretched plane is going north. So all this tells you it's a real comical farce, but of course lives at stake. And then at 5:20, this is very interesting information released by our people. They quote an unnamed captain, must be a Malaysian captain, and he was asked at 5:20, what's happened to MH370? And his answer at 5:20, Mr. Lam, at 5:20 he says, MH370 has never left Malaysian airspace. Which means that it's been in Malaysia for 5 hours. I mean, that's quite an extraordinary thing if that is truthful. And you've got to check. So if we went to trial, lawyers will be asking him questions about this once we discover who this captain is. And then, again, Ho Chi Minh for the 6th time asks about us. And then at 6:14, remember the plane is scheduled to land at 6:30. It's a 6-hour flight, 12:30 to 6:30. At 6:14, KL Air Traffic asked Ho Chi Minh, has search and rescue been activated? And again, this is shocking. Sorry, the plane is a Malaysian plane. It's leaving Malaysia, and our chums are asking Vietnam, have you done search and rescue? So I think if we interviewed the Vietnamese air traffic controllers, I don't know how many were there, they will say, look, we just cannot believe it. Are we watching a film or what? Why are we doing search and rescue? It's your Malaysian plane. What evidence is there? It's crashed off Vietnam. And that's how silly it was. And then 6:30, as I told you, it was scheduled to land. And then at 8:19, the last satellite communication, the famous handshake, which we discovered later, at 8:19, which suggests that the plane was still flying, because all the scientists say that handshake can only happen if the plane is above and not on the ground. So it's still flying somewhere at 8:19. So I've already said about that Ho Chi Minh comes out as heroes, and can you believe it? We've got our authorities have the cheek when some international observers noticed how fantastic Vietnam was performing. Around the 3rd or 4th of May, our DCA definitely, and I think probably Hishamuddin also, started criticizing Vietnam. They were blaming Vietnam again. And of course, Malaysians, our government is champion for blaming others. They are never, ever at fault. It's always somebody else. And what this tells you is, even on the information that they've released to us, there is so much gaps. So there are 45 minutes, 50 minutes when there is not a single event. And if I stop and when you're listening to this narration, you will realize that I'm sure all of you have flown. Everybody in this room, I'm sure, has flown. If nothing else, thanks to Tony Fernandez, since everybody else can fly, and everybody can fly. You will understand that when you're flying, even seconds matter, and minutes certainly matter, and hours certainly matter. It is a 6-hour flight. So it is critical that every minute or few minutes are accounted for. So there is a terrible omission in the information released to us so far. Then what is very interesting was the press report that Hishamuddin, the minister, released, a press statement when the preliminary report came out. And I want to read this to you because this is in the public domain, written by, maybe it's press secretary, but read out by the minister. And it's under the heading, the military's tracking of MH370. As stated previously, Malaysian military radar did track, and I want to add the words, in real time, an aircraft making a turn back in a westerly direction across peninsular Malaysia on the morning of 8th of March. The aircraft was categorized as friendly by the radar operator, and therefore no further action was taken at the time. The radar data was reviewed in a playback. So what I just read, first paragraph is real time. Somebody actually picked it up. Then at 8:30, that means they now know the plane has just disappeared. They're supposed to land at 6:30. At 8:30, they review the playback and they notice this, and they then send it to the Air Force operations at 9 a.m. Of course, the Air Force already know this because they've got their radar. And then following further discussion up the chain of command, the military informed the acting Transport and Defense Minister, Hishamuddin, at approximately 10:30 a.m., so Saturday morning, of the possible turn back of the aircraft. So if I stop there, if this must be correct, this is their statement. Hishamuddin therefore has told the world he knew at 10:30 on Saturday of the turning back of the plane. And the minister, he then informed the Prime Minister, who immediately ordered that search and rescue operations be initiated in the Straits of Malacca, that is consistent with turning back, along with South China Sea, which is totally cockeyed. So, and I can't understand why they spent 1 week and told the whole world it is south of Vietnam and South China Sea, when they knew that morning it had turned back. That is one of the, and in fact, I'm surprised these countries, well, they may have sent quite diplomatic notes, but they should have publicly criticized Malaysia and say, look, why did you waste our resources when you yourself knew at 10:30 the plane had turned back? So that takes you into the questions that call out for answer. And these questions, again, rely to some extent on the information that I just read you. I again preface it by saying, I don't trust this information. I don't know whether it's truthful. But on the assumption it's truthful, these are the questions that all of you should ask. Why did not the KL Air Traffic Control, upon discovering the radar signal for the plane had disappeared at 1:21, and also certainly when Ho Chi Minh told them at 1:38 that MH had not entered the Vietnamese airspace, why did not KL Air Traffic Control inform all the other authorities? They should have told the Air Force, the military, DCA, police, and MAS. In other words, when you find this out, surely the protocol is not for you to keep quiet and do nothing. You should do something about it, and there must be protocol. They must be trained to say what happens when these things occur. Secondly, when and where did the plane execute the turn back? Because we know there's a turn back. And then for how long after it carried out the turn back was the plane in Malaysian airspace, both as a matter of time and also distance? I say that because you remember what I told you, the captain, some captain says the plane was in Malaysian airspace till 5 o'clock. That I think is extreme, which means he's just circling around Malaya. And that's, I mean, but somebody said that. We want to know how long. Then, of course, you will remember that our papers were carrying stories that MH370, this after they accepted that the plane had turned back, our papers said that MH370 had dropped its altitude from 35,000 feet, which was what it was supposed to be flying at cruising speed, to 5,000 feet when flying over parts of Peninsular Malaysia. So did that happen? And if so, why did a plane drop from 35 to 5,000? And then also the newspapers around the time were saying that the co-pilot tried to establish contacts through his mobile phone while the plane was flying low over Penang. And did that happen? If so, was he successful? Did he contact anybody? Was it his mother or girlfriend or neighbor or what? What happened? Because that's important, and because that also seems to suggest that the co-pilot may have been locked out. He knows something is happening, whether it's a hijacker or a pilot or whatever. They must answer these questions. Then we come to the decision by the radio operator in the early hours of 6th March, when he says that the unidentified aircraft was friendly. Now this is shocking. I mean, you don't have to be a technical person to know that in the radar, they won't be crying out and say, I am friendly, or something else blipping and say, I am an enemy. You have to assume everything that you don't know of is an enemy. In fact, because Malaysia is not at war, you have to assume that there will be no enemy plane in your airspace because we are not at war. So you have to be more guarded about a friendly aircraft, because what may seem to be a friendly aircraft could be disguised as a friendly aircraft and actually could be coming to hit the Prime Minister's office in Putrajaya or somewhere, I don't know, or KLCC or whatever. So why did they suddenly say it's friendly? And then even after this chum decided it was a friendly aeroplane, why did the authorities still do nothing? Why did the authorities not put 2 and 2 together and say, hey, we know that MH370 is missing, and we have an unidentified plane on the radar. So you don't have to have a Harvard MBA, you don't have to have a PhD from Imperial College London to put the 2 and 2 together and say, hey, presto, this missing plane, is this on the radar? Because surely this can't be happening every evening. So I'm stunned that they didn't do that. And now, the most important question as to why they could have saved it, which is, why did not the Air Force scramble its jet fighters to intercept and force MH370 to land? And that is their critical answer. And that question was asked of the Transport Minister by the Australian program Four Corners. And his unbelievable answer was, what, do you expect us to shoot the plane down? Well, that again tells you how wrong his grasp of his office is, and the purpose of going and intercepting. The purpose of going to intercept, and essentially what happens is 2 Air Force planes will go, one on the left-hand side and one on the right-hand side, and they will establish communications with the pilot, and they will know what's happening. And if the pilot does not respond to the Air Force, as has happened in history, then you don't want to shoot the plane, because obviously you will know it's mass, you will know it's our own plane, and you will never, even our dummies will not shoot our plane. So you won't shoot it, But if the guy, if it's suicidal, hijacker or pilot, you will at least know immediately where the plane has crashed, because your right hand and the left hand planes have seen it crashing. That is the purpose of interception, not to shoot the wretched thing as a first option. And so that is our great minister's answer. And then I told you about the South China Sea. I mean, to me, that's also a shocking lie, that they could tell the world and tell them for 1 whole week, look in South China Sea, when it had turned back. And that was a real lie which cost a lot of our neighbors to waste their resources. And then they're assuming, I think now they all seem to accept, and I think Mr. Lam, if I asked you, would you accept as a fact that it's turned back?
I can.
Yeah. Okay, so on the assumption, because I'm not still 100% sure, but everybody seems to accept that it's turned back. So let's assume it turned back. Then why do you say, why are they so sure it went south, turned left to Australia, rather than turn right and up north? You can go up to Pakistan, Tashkent and all that. I mean, I'm not so convinced about the reasoning as to why they are looking down rather than up. And then most importantly, when it comes to the Imazat information, why was our Prime Minister, and I think Kit Siang will no doubt be able to answer this since they get on very well and they know each other very well. What facts did our Prime Minister have apart from Imazat's opinion when he suddenly announced on the 24th of March, and I remember watching it was about 10 o'clock at night on TV because he wanted to get premiere time in London and New York. 10 p.m. he came and on CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, when he said the quote, MH370 quote had ended, unquote, in the South China Sea, had ended.
Indian Ocean.
Sorry, South Indian Ocean, sorry. Yeah, and had ended, yeah. Now, of course, that is a silly thing to do because you know immediately the families are not going to accept it. The families are going to say, quite rightly, where is the proof? We want to see the plane. And we want to see the dead bodies. We are not going to accept anything. So anybody advising the Prime Minister will say, look, please don't make that announcement. You have no proof. And of course, now looking back, 2.5 months later, there's still no proof. So it just tells you what a silly, silly statement that was. But then this Prime Minister is used to doing silly things, so it doesn't mean anything. Then a bit later, suddenly there was a discussion that it was off the waters of Bangladesh. Can you all remember that? Some Australian companies said that their scientific research says it's off Bangladesh. And I think the Bangladesh Navy went and looked for things. Not that one has any confidence in the Bangladesh Navy. They're all probably Malaysia. But anyway, that is what happened to that. And then cargo manifest. The disclosed information is there's mangosteens, there's lithium batteries. So if we stop at lithium batteries first, the lithium batteries that they told us, assuming it's truthful, is 2,400 kgs or 5,400 pounds. And it's being carried in a passenger aircraft as opposed to cargo. Because actually you can book like DHL and all this cargo, you can book it and then you can put all these batteries there. But we had this amount. That is a bit dangerous, so we need to have explanation. Then there is also another cargo, which, and I can't say how many items there are because they just put it as unidentified cargo. It could be 1 item or it could be 200 items. We just don't know what it is. And that is 6,400 pounds or 2,900 kg. So essentially it's tons of materials were taken on this plane which should not be taken on a passenger plane. So questions can be asked on that. And then I'm going to put forward some suggestions which may be absolutely controversial because we cannot accept the integrity of the information and the truth of the information. Can I suggest 2 things which hasn't come out in the public domain? How do we know that the captain, if the captain is the cause, because that is one theory, how do we know that the captain did not actually fill up his plane, and I've checked with Mars and other pilots have the authority to do that, to fill up the petrol of the plane for 12 hours, which is the maximum capacity for the plane. Because the Beijing flight, as we know, is 6 hours. And international safety requirements require you to put about 10% or 1 or 2 hours more, so that just in case you have to fly from Beijing to Shanghai or Tokyo before you land. So in a 6-hour flight, you will have 8 hours of fuel. But how do we know that actually this plane had full petrol? And number two, if he did, will we be surprised if all the records asking for full petrol have disappeared from Mars or Petronas or whoever supplies? It's disappeared. Cannot be ruled out. Remember immigration records? Then, and if that theory is correct, then the plane actually could have flown for 4 hours more, and we are looking in the wrong place. It could be the South Pole and Antarctica, or if it went up north, it could be much higher up. Can anybody tell me as a matter of fact that that never happened? And the next question is, can we also rule out as a matter of definite fact that our air traffic control did not have communications with Captain Zari and the co-pilot? Because they keep saying that they had no communications. How do we know? Do you mean we trust them? They could have been having communications, or with the hijacker. They could have had, and all that is erased. Because you can erase things. So again, those are questions. And why do we ask these questions? Because it is not an honest, transparent system. And then I end by saying, as I wish my time, just 3 or 4 very recent developments after 1st of May. And I mentioned Hishamuddin's Four Corners interview. In that interview, he accepted that the military and the civil authorities share air traffic control facilities in Subang. So the rumor that they are in one building is correct. They share one building. And then the military was told to keep an eye on MH370 on the radar, but they allowed it to disappear because they said it's non-hostile. And then this is the best. In its turn back, Hishamuddin is saying MH370 flew directly above the military air base in Penang, which did nothing. So this tells me actually the guy had a sense of humor. Whoever is doing it had a sense of humor, whether it's the hijacker or the pilot. He's laughing at our system and saying, flying at 5,000 feet over our military base, and our chums are sleeping. And that's Hishamuddin saying that. And then the next piece of information is on the 27th of May, people started asking the question, hey, is Imazat correct finally? Imazat is finally some British people sitting out of London giving their opinion. Now which is why you must tie in with the Prime Minister believing these people. When actually, if you stop and think, actually this Imazat has become world famous. Imazat has become world famous thanks to MH370. So they had free public relations exercise thanks to us. And they, for all you know, it could have been one big fairy tale. And in fact, today, as I was this morning, and then this evening before I came to the Chinese, to the speech, BBC is reporting Imazat saying, today, this is their latest excuse today, they are saying, well, actually, Australians and all are looking at the wrong place. They are not looking further down. So come on, I mean, ridiculous. And the final statement I want to say is the US Navy on the 28th of May said, anyway, according to our Ocean Engineering Division, the 4 pings did not come from MH's black box. So it is, I mean, so I'm afraid, although it's a massive tragedy for the family, it was conducted in such a farcical manner that in many ways one has to laugh about it. But of course you can't, I accept the gravity. And so it's a massive tragedy. Thank you very much.